Dumbledore is death. This theory reads Albus Dumbledore not simply as a headmaster, but as a living echo of death itself, drawn from the tale of the three brothers found in Deathly Hallows. In that story, death offers three gifts to three brothers: an unbeatable wand, a stone that calls back the dead, and a cloak that hides its wearer from the world. Each gift finds its way into the main story through a different character. Voldemort chases the Elder Wand and dies because of that obsession, mirroring the brother who wanted an unbeatable weapon. Snape spends his life haunted by loss and longing for someone he can never bring back, echoing the brother who misused the resurrection stone. Harry, meanwhile, inherits the cloak and eventually walks toward death without fear, just like the third brother who greeted death as an old friend. What ties Dumbledore to all of this is that he touches every single hallow over the course of his life. He once owned the Elder Wand, he briefly kept the Resurrection Stone hidden inside a ring, and he is the person who ultimately hands the cloak down to Harry. Then there is the scene at King's Cross where Harry meets Dumbledore after the killing curse in the forest. The setting is soft, bright, and dreamlike, and Dumbledore behaves less like a man and more like a guide standing at the edge of the afterlife. Rowling never confirmed any of this directly, but the pattern is consistent enough that many readers see Dumbledore as something closer to a personification of death than an ordinary wizard, someone who understands mortality so completely that he becomes its representative within the story. Neville was the true chosen one. The prophecy given by Professor Trelawney describes a child born as July draws to a close, to parents who stood against Voldemort 3 times, and it never actually names a single boy. Both Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom fit that description perfectly, since Neville was born just before Harry and his parents fought Voldemort with the same defiance the prophecy describes. The detail that changes everything is that Severus Snape only overheard part of the prophecy before he was caught listening, meaning Voldemort made his decision without ever hearing the full message. His choice to mark Harry may have come down to bias rather than fate, since Harry's family more closely resembled his own background. Some fans take this further and suggest Dumbledore quietly understood that Neville could have been the true subject of the prophecy, and that he allowed Harry to become the public symbol partly to shield Neville from a life under constant threat. Neville's own actions later in the series lend weight to the idea. He is the one who beheads Nagini, the final Horcrux, in the middle of the Battle of Hogwarts, an act that finally makes Voldemort mortal and gives Harry the opening he needs to end the war. On top of that, Neville pulls the sword of Gryffindor from the Sorting Hat in a moment of desperate courage, the same feat usually associated only with Harry. Taken together, these moments suggest that fate did not lock onto one boy alone. It simply waited to see which of the two would step forward when the moment came. And Neville proved just as capable of fulfilling that role as Harry ever was. Ron is a seer. Ron Weasley spends most of the series treated as the funny, slightly overshadowed friend, yet a closer look at his offhand comments reveals a pattern that some fans believe points to a hidden prophetic gift. In the very first book, he warns Harry against returning to the Mirror of Erised, a warning that turns out to matter greatly once Harry ends up facing Quirrell in that same room. In Goblet of Fire, Ron jokes about Harry losing something important, and about being betrayed by someone close to him, comments that end up mirroring real events during the Triwizard Tournament. During his divination lessons in Prisoner of Azkaban, Ron reads an acorn shape in the tea leaves and predicts unexpected good fortune for Harry, something fans connect to Harry's later career at the Ministry. He also makes an offhand remark about Tom Riddle's award being for something dark, a comment that lines up eerily well with the truth about Riddle's early life. What makes the theory more compelling to supporters is that Ron actually fails his official divination exam. And within the wizarding world, true seers are often described as unreliable under formal testing, since their gift tends to surface naturally rather than on command. Instead of controlled visions, Ron's insight arrives disguised as jokes and throwaway lines, which is exactly the kind of unpolished, unconscious prophecy that canon associates with real seers. Nothing in the books confirms this directly, but the pattern of his casual remarks lining up with major plot points keeps the idea alive among readers who enjoy connecting these small dots. Harry has 2 souls. When Voldemort returns to a body and goblet of fire, he uses Harry's blood as part of the ritual, and that single decision ends up protecting Harry more than anyone realizes at the time. Lily's old protection, the same magic that saved Harry as an infant, transfers into Voldemort through that blood, which ties their fates together in a way neither of them intends. This connection becomes central to understanding what happens later when Voldemort strikes Harry with the killing curse in the Forbidden Forest. Instead of dying outright, Harry experiences something close to limbo, waking in a soft, misty version of King's Cross Station where he meets Dumbledore and sees a small, damaged creature suffering nearby, representing the wounded fragment of Voldemort's soul that had been living inside him since childhood. The curse destroys that fragment rather than destroying Harry himself, which is why he survives and is given the choice to return to his body. This is often summarized by fans as Harry carrying two souls for years without knowing it, his own and an unwanted piece of Voldemort's, until the forest confrontation finally separates them. Dumbledore later explains that true mastery over death is not about escaping it, but about accepting it fully, which is exactly what Harry does when he walks toward Voldemort, expecting to die. He is not immortal in a literal sense, and he can still grow old and pass away naturally, but the experience leaves him standing apart from ordinary mortality, having faced death directly and returned changed by the encounter. Crookshanks was the Potter's cat. In her final letter to Sirius Black, Lily Potter mentions a cat living with them at Godric's Hollow, a detail that later fuels speculation about where that animal ended up after the attack. Years afterward, when Hermione buys Crookshanks from the magical menagerie, the shopkeeper tells her the ginger cat had been sitting in the shop for a long time without anyone taking him home. Fans link these two details together, imagining that the Potter's cat survived the tragedy at Godric's Hollow and eventually made his way into that same shop. Crookshanks' behaviour throughout Prisoner of Azkaban adds fuel to the theory, since he immediately distrusts Scabbers, who is secretly Peter Pettigrew in his rat form, and he later cooperates closely with Sirius, while Sirius is disguised as a large black dog. Rowling herself has explained that Crookshanks is part of a magical breed with unusually sharp instincts, capable of sensing untrustworthy people around him, which gives a simpler explanation for his behaviour that has nothing to do with any past connection to the Potter family. Nothing in the books ever confirms a direct link between Lily's cat and Hermione's, and the letter never even gives the animal a name. Still, the timeline fits well enough, and Crookshanks' uncanny ability to recognize exactly the right people at exactly the right moments keeps this theory circulating among readers who enjoy imagining a quiet, loyal thread connecting Harry's parents to his own school years. Snape killed Hedwig. During the chaotic escape known as the Battle of the Seven Potters, 6 of Harry's friends transform into decoys using Polyjuice Potion, flying in different directions to confuse the Death Eaters chasing the real Harry. One key detail separates the real Harry from his decoys, and that is Hedwig, who travels with him in her cage rather than with any of the doubles. Supporters of this theory argue that Severus Snape, still operating as a trusted Death Eater at this point, recognized the danger that a visibly moving, living owl posed to the entire plan, since her presence in the cage could immediately single out which flying figure was the genuine Harry Potter. Rather than allowing another Death Eater to notice the same detail and act on it with far worse intentions, the theory suggests Snape cast the curse that killed Hedwig himself, turning what looks like senseless cruelty into a calculated, protective decision made in a split second under enormous pressure. This fits with what readers already know about Snape's character, a man forced to commit terrible acts throughout the war while secretly working to keep Harry alive at every turn. Nothing in the text explicitly credits Snape with firing that particular curse, and the scene itself is chaotic and fast-moving, leaving plenty of room for interpretation. Still, given everything later revealed about Snape's hidden loyalty to Lily and his quiet efforts to shield her son, some readers find it easier to imagine Hedwig's death as one more sacrifice buried inside a war fought largely out of sight. Hagrid is a Death Eater. Rubeus Hagrid is one of the warmest, most trusted figures in the entire series, which is exactly what makes this theory feel so unsettling to the fans who entertain it. They point first to the moment Hagrid transforms Dudley using a broken wand hidden inside an umbrella. Magic that should not technically work at all unless Hagrid possesses far more raw power than anyone assumes. He also arrives at the ruins of Godric's Hollow suspiciously soon after the attack that killed James and Lily, and he later travels to the Dursleys' remote hideout without using a broom, a thestral, or apparition, a method of unexplained flight that some readers associate specifically with Voldemort's own abilities. Hagrid is also the one who first introduces Harry to Professor Quirrell, who is secretly carrying Voldemort on the back of his head, and he gives Harry the owl that some fans imagine could have doubled as a way of tracking his movements. Throughout the series, Hagrid repeatedly lets slip information he is supposed to keep secret, and he never seems to directly confront Death Eaters in battle until the very end of the war. When he is finally captured during the final battle, he is treated with unusual gentleness by Voldemort's side, rather than harshly punished, which theorists find suspicious for someone supposedly on the wrong side of that fight. None of this is treated as canon, and Hagrid's loyalty to Dumbledore and to Harry is affirmed again and again throughout the books. But the odd string of coincidences is enough to keep curious fans building elaborate secret histories around him. Ron is Dumbledore. Sometimes nicknamed the Rumbledore theory by fans, this is widely considered one of the strangest ideas in the entire fandom. Built on the claim that Ron Weasley somehow travels back through time, lives out an entire separate life, and becomes the very headmaster who later guides him through school. Supporters point to surface similarities between the two characters, both tall and thin, with notably large hands, both fond of sweets, and both sharing a strange fascination with Bertie Bott's every flavour beans. Ron breaks his leg at one point in Prisoner of Azkaban, and eagle-eyed fans note that Dumbledore carries a scar on the same leg, treating the coincidence as a clue rather than an accident. Dumbledore's uncanny insight into Harry's future is explained under this theory as simple memory, since he would already have lived through these exact events the first time around as Ron. Despite how entertaining the idea is, it collapses the moment it meets the actual timeline laid out in the books. Dumbledore's childhood in Godric's Hollow, his relationship with his sister Ariana and brother Aberforth, and his complicated friendship with Gellert Grindelwald are all documented long before Ron Weasley is ever born. Time turners in the wizarding world are explicitly limited to a matter of hours, not decades, and the entire stock of them is destroyed during the battle at the Department of Mysteries, closing off any realistic path for such an elaborate journey. Ron and Dumbledore also appear together on the page many times throughout the series, existing clearly as two separate people living in the same room at the same time. As far-fetched as the theory is, its sheer boldness is part of why it has become one of the most talked about pieces of fan speculation to come out of the entire series. A reminder of just how far imagination can stretch when readers fall in love with a story this large.